Hello, this is Russell Almond with the Choristers Guild, and welcome to the Open Fifth podcast, where we discuss musical notes from the church, schools, communities, and everything else from C to G. Today, we are going to be talking about nurturing young singers, and specifically, we're going to talk about ear training for elementary singers. So it's a very interesting topic, and so for this topic, I definitely needed to bring in an expert. So the expert for today is Katie Houts. Katie's been the Sacred Choral editor for the Choristers Guild since 2013, and she's responsible for publication of our sacred anthems, books, collections, and musicals. So if you watched episode 1, you heard me talk about editing in the sacred choral world. That is Katie. So Katie's based in Salt Lake City, where she lives with her husband and 3 children. In addition to her work with Choristers Guild, she spends her week with hundreds of young singers across the Salt Lake Valley. She directs the middle school choirs and teaches elementary music at Wasatch Charter School. And she serves as the music director for Rise Up Junior, the training ensemble for the Rise Up Children's Choir, which is Utah's premier vocal performance group for children's ages from 4 to 18. So that's a big deal. And she also works as the children's music director and staff accompanist for Hilltop UMC. So welcome, Katie. I'm glad to have you on the Open Fifth podcast. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Russell. I'm glad to be here.
Yes, and we're glad to have you. So we're talking about ear training with elementary singers. So, when you're teaching elementary singers, how much can we actually focus on ear training?
Well, we don't talk a lot about ear training for young musicians. We usually do that in high school and college. We talk about ear training much more, but really we should be adding ear training into every rehearsal or every class, even with preschoolers and kindergartners and early elementary, all the way up through elementary. Because the younger we start, the better musicians we're nurturing.
Right.
It's easy to assume that your training is just for mixed ensembles or ensembles who are singing in parts or singing a cappella. But before you can sing in parts, you have to sing a beautiful unison. And to do that, we have to nurture the ears just as much as we do the voice.
Absolutely. Yeah, that makes complete sense because if you just start late, and start training ear, then you've missed out on some of the formative years. So give us some examples. What does ear training actually look like with your elementary students?
Ear training looks a lot like fun games and stories with my young students. When I go into my elementary classrooms, one of the things I love to use is John Feyerabend's story tales. And the kids love these too. So it's a way for the teacher to establish a modality, minor or major, and you tell a story by using sing-song. You don't do it in rhythm, but there are verses that tell the story, and then the refrain comes back again and again. And after children hear that a couple of times, then they start to sing along. And once I know that they have it, then I'll just drop out and let the children carry it and just listen.
Very cool.
Because we know that one of the reasons I love story tales is because we know that children need to hear something 4 to 6 times on average before they're able to sing it themselves. So these story tales with the refrains that come back again and again allow them to hear it, and then they can learn it, they internalize it, and then they can sing it. And then the teacher can drop out and really practice listening. One of the biggest things I've learned when it comes to ear training in young voices is teachers don't need to sing. For us to really evaluate and train our children to use and trust their ears, we can't be their crutch. So the less that we sing, once we know the children have a song, the less we sing, the better children will learn to trust their own ears and discover their voices.
Very interesting. Yeah, that makes sense. Because I know that's easiest thing for me to do is, especially like in teaching, I always will just keep doing it and never give them the opportunity to shine. So yeah, that's very good. So once, now that you're talking about actually listening to them, so how do you evaluate? How do you know that they're progressing and that they're learning what you're trying to teach them?
This is where I use a lot of solo singing. and
Hmm.
games. Um, so I'll use games like the color game, which I learned from Carol Kimmel, and I have a color board filled with colors just painted across the board, and I'll just hold it and I'll sing, I'm thinking of a color. What is that color? And if the children would like to guess, they just raise their hand, and then I call on them. And the only rule is you have to sing your answer.
Hmm.
So it's a fun game for them to play, but
Yeah.
really I'm evaluating, are they matching my pitch? Can they carry a tune? You can evaluate rhythm too with that, but I use it mostly for ear training. The children just think they're playing a fun game, but what that allows you to do is really listen. And um, so, and especially with young singers, um, it allows you to give them some feedback. So
Hmm.
if you sing, I'm thinking of a color, what is that color? And you have a child sing, is it red? Like lower than you sang,
Yeah.
then you can then match their pitch. You can engage them in some conversation
Hmm.
and sing, it wasn't red. Do you want to guess another color? And see if they can match you at that pitch. And
Hmm.
if they can,
Wow.
chances are their ears are capable of hearing. But it means that you need to just do some more vocal exploration with them so that they can discover that they have a higher part of their voice that
Yeah.
they don't use very often, but it's there. You just need to explore a little bit more. Um, so, games where you can focus on solo singing are really important for evaluation. And you'll always have those children who are a little bit shy too. Um, and if you call on them for a game, or if you're just going in a sequential order, because some children will never raise their hands for games. So
Yeah.
if you go in a sequential order, you'll hit everybody and be able to assess how everyone is doing, and they just won't sing, or they'll sing very quietly, or they'll sing on a different pitch. And that could be because they're just nervous or shy. So I'll make a point to just note that in my mind. And then when we're singing something all together, I'll walk around the room and get really close to them,
Hmm.
um, and and then listen that way to see, are they matching pitch? Are they with us there? So there are other ways
Yeah.
you can do that without putting a child on the spot and making them feel even more nervous or
Right.
vulnerable
Hmm.
than they already feel.
Yeah, that makes sense. So what how how would someone start to implement this in their teaching? Like how much time is it something you do with your warm-ups, or what how do you implement this into your rehearsal time?
That is a great question. And I think a lot of directors, that's the first question they have. Okay, well, how do I start?
Right.
The good thing is that we are already doing, I would imagine, most directors are already doing these types of things in their
Mm.
rehearsal. And um, when I started to be intentional and find ways to be efficient and ensuring that I was effective, those are the three
Mhm.
keys in my mind: intentional, efficient, and effective.
Mm.
When we just put some thought into it, into the things we're already doing, it's not so daunting.
Right.
So,
Mhm.
um, so I use these little games as transitional activities, or um, while we're waiting for everyone to join us for class or for rehearsal, I'll pull out my color board and we'll do that. Or we'll play a little telephone game while we're waiting,
Mhm.
where I sing pitch "ooh" on a nice open vowel, and I'll pass it to the first child in the line, and they have to pass it down the line.
Mm.
Also a way for me to evaluate, is a child hearing a pitch and then able
Right.
to sound that pitch again. Um, and then I'll just make notes of who is having trouble. Uh, those little 2-minute things make a huge difference. So you can use them in your warm-ups if you're working on vowel shape with your choir, or open space, lifting the soft palate. Even with young singers, you can do that.
Hmm.
Um, a lot of ear training is just teaching them how to listen. So you can sing just a horrible vowel, ooh, and then sing a nice open vowel, ooh. Ask them how it was different, and they'll
Right.
be able to form some thoughts. Oh, that is different. I heard something different.
Mm,
Now my teacher is going to help me understand why that's different and
yeah.
and how I can do that too. So in your warm-ups, you can do it if you're teaching. If you're teaching a new song, you can do it in your preparatory materials, the way that you just teach a phrase by rote.
Hmm.
You can say, who thinks they have it? I'll do that a lot with Rise Up Junior. I'll just sing something that they've never heard before. Who thinks they have it? Just one time hearing, and I'll see who can pick up all of it, some of it, none of it.
Right. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Very cool. Well, I'm glad that you came on today and had, it's really cool to hear specifics. It's I think, when you just think of ear training with young singers, it's kind of like, where do I start? What do I do? So I think that's really good that we, giving some ideas that we can take into our rehearsals and start right away. So thank you so much for coming on today and sharing your knowledge. I appreciate, all you do for Choristers Guild, of course, and it's always great to hear what your expertise is on these matters. So thanks for joining.
Thanks, Russell. My pleasure.
All righty. Well, thank you again for joining us with on the Open Fifth podcast. Again, remember to subscribe and notify so you're first one to hear all of these amazing new videos. We have some more experts coming on later this season to talk about some specific topics from all around the choral world. So I hope you will join us then on the Open Fifth podcast.